We are on number 6 in the Devo series, Tell Them, telling our children all the great things about God, because if we don't tell them, who will? And today it's called Slime and Mud, and the verses are from Psalm 40. At verse 2, it says, He lifted me out of the slimy pit and set me on a rock and put a new song in my mouth. What kids wouldn't love to visualize being in a slimy pit of mud and muck and being rescued and pulled out and set on a rock? It might be cool to take your own kids in your realm of influence to a creek where there's a muddy bank and large rocks to go with these verses. And look at verse 5. The writer says if he spoke of all the Lord's deeds, there would be too many to tell. Wonders that he has done. So maybe the wonders, or one of the wonders that we can tell the children, is how he set the stars in the sky and he calls them out nightly, one by their names. We can show them blades of grass and pull them up and talk about roots, deep ones and shallow ones. And other miracles and wonders we can tell them about are their own births, wonders of grace also when we've sinned and hurt one another. There are so many wonders to show and tell them. In verse 10 it says, I do not conceal and I do not hide, but instead I will speak of your love and faithfulness. I bet there are events, big and small, that happen in your life that you haven't purposefully hidden from anyone, but you haven't thought to share them. So think of them and write them down and share them with the children that you know. I remember when my kids were tiny and it was a hot summer day and we were all thirsty, but I really didn't have any cash to stop and get a drink. We drove up to the bank where I was going to make a deposit, and in the drive-thru they were handing out cold drinks. I've never seen that happen since then, but it's a story that we all recall and smile when we were thirsty and he gave us drink. So tell them. In verse 16 it says, May all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you, and may those who long for your help say, The Lord is great. That's a great directive, and hopefully our kids will have their own stories of his deliverance to tell as they grow up. But they need to hear the stories from us now to add to their storybook. If they're going to rejoice and say that the Lord is great, then they need to know why he's so great. Kids are not too small to recall the goodness in our lives. It might be a simple supper where the entire family or friends gathered around the same table and dishes are being passed, where we can recall how one time maybe we didn't have money for groceries and someone brought us a meal. Or maybe we're sharing a dessert by passing a pie or a cake for a birthday celebration, and we say out loud how thankful we are for another year that we have lived. Life itself is a story to rejoice about. We are also told in this chapter to be glad in the Lord and to note his saving help. So as we begin to note and remember and recall to those around us his goodness in our lives, it encourages them to place their own stories on the pages of their life to recall when needed. Think of it like a reference book. Kids will add their own stories, but if they have our stories too about God's faithfulness, the book will be thick. And when they're sad or lonely, they can look up that time when an adult told them that God brings friends to the lonely. When's the next family dinner that you're having? Make sure to include story time to tell them. When's the next outing that you're having at a creek or near a creek? Remember that slime story from above when we are pulled out of the muck and set on the rock, a good foundation. Just ask God to remind you of all that he's done in your life, and then as the circumstances allow and as you create them, then tell them.